The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. I stood under the gallery's narrow awning, watching water cascade off the edge like a curtain separating me from the rest of Boston. My camera bag felt heavier than usual, weighted down by rejection and the knowledge that I had exactly $47 in my bank account. The art director inside had barely glanced at my portfolio before dismissing me with a practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We're looking for something more. Commercial, Sarah, your work is beautiful, but it doesn't fit our current vision. Current vision. Code 4, we can't sell your photographs to people who want pretty pictures of the harbor at sunset." My photographs told stories, raw, unfiltered moments of real life in the city. A homeless veteran's weathered hands. Children playing in spray from a broken hydrant. The contrast between wealth and poverty visible in a single frame. Apparently, truth didn't sell as well as fantasy. I pulled my worn jacket tighter, preparing to make the 6-block sprint to the T-station when I heard it. The screech of tires on wet pavement, followed by the sickening crunch of metal colliding with metal and concrete. My photographer's instinct kicked in before my rational mind could stop me. I was running toward the sound, camera bag bouncing against my hip, before I'd even consciously decided to move. The scene materialized through the rain like something from a nightmare. A black Mercedes wrapped around a light pole, steam rising from its crushed hood. The driver's side door was caved in, trapping whoever was inside. Traffic had stopped, people were staring from the safety of their cars, but no one was moving. No one was helping. I reached the car, my hands already shaking. Through the shattered window, I could see him, a man in an expensive suit, blood streaming down the side of his face, his eyes half closed. The acrid smell of gasoline mixed with rain, and somewhere in the back of my panic-fogged mind, I knew I should wait for professionals, for people who knew what they were doing. But I'd been 12 years old once, watching a car sink into the Charles River while adults stood frozen on the shore. I'd made a choice that day that left a permanent scar on my wrist and saved a little boy's life. I wasn't about to stand by and do nothing now. "Sir, can you hear me?" My voice sounded stronger than I felt as I reached through the broken window, carefully avoiding the jagged glass. His eyes opened fully then, dark and intense despite the obvious pain. They fixed on my face with an expression I couldn't quite read, shock, maybe, or recognition, which made no sense because I'd never seen this man before in my life. I would have remembered him. Even bleeding and trapped, he was striking. Sharp jawline, dark hair now matted with blood, and those eyes that seemed to see straight through me. There was something almost familiar about him, a ghost of a feeling I couldn't quite grasp. "Stay still," I told him, trying to remember the basic first aid I'd learned years ago. "Help is coming." "Can you tell me your name?" His hand shot out with surprising speed, catching my wrist. Not violently, but with purpose. His fingers, warm despite the rain and shock, pressed against the inside of my wrist right over the thin vertical scar I usually kept hidden under bracelets or long sleeves. The scar I got 15 years ago, cutting my hand on broken glass while dragging a drowning child from a submerged car. His pupils dilated as he stared at that faded white line. His lips moved, forming a single word that was half statement, half question, carried on a breath that smoked in the cold November air. "You!" Then his eyes rolled back and his hand went slack, though his fingers remained loosely curled around my wrist. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. People were finally emerging from their cars, from the surrounding buildings. Someone put a hand on my shoulder, trying to pull me back, but I couldn't move. I was frozen, staring at this stranger who had looked at my scar like it held the answers to questions I didn't even know he was asking. The paramedics arrived in a blur of motion and shouted commands. They had to pry his fingers from my wrist gently, and even unconscious, he seemed reluctant to let go. I stumbled backward, watching them work with professional efficiency to extract him from the wreckage. Only then did I notice the other men who had appeared, 4 of them, all in dark suits, all with the kind of build that suggested they spent more time in gyms than offices. One of them, a mountain of a man with salt and pepper hair and a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, approached me. "You helped him." It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. His eyes swept over me, assessing, cataloging every detail. "What's your name?" Sarah Chun." My voice shook slightly. "Is he going to be okay?" "He'll be fine." The man's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Mr. Vitelli is stronger than he looks." He pulled out a card from his inner jacket pocket, pressed it into my hand. "If you need anything at all, you call this number. Mr. Vitelli takes care of people who help him." Mr. Vitelli. The name meant nothing to me, but the way he said it suggested it should. I looked down at the card. Heavy stock, embossed lettering. Just a name, Anthony Russo, and a phone number. No company, no title. I don't need anything, I said, trying to hand it back. Anyone would have done the same. Anthony's laugh was short and humorless. No, Miss Chun, most people would have kept walking. You didn't. He closed my fingers around the card. Keep it, trust me, you'll want it. Before I could protest, he was gone, following the ambulance that was already pulling away, lights flashing red and blue against the rain-slicked streets. The other seated men dispersed with military precision, and within minutes, it was as if the whole incident had been absorbed by the city, leaving only twisted metal and broken glass as evidence. I stood there, rain soaking through my jacket, staring at the card in my hand and the faint red marks on my wrist where the stranger's fingers had gripped me. My scar seemed to tingle, phantom pain from an old wound that should have stopped hurting years ago. Something had just changed. I could feel it in my bones, in the way the air tasted different, in the strange weightlessness in my chest that felt like standing on the edge of a precipice. I didn't know what and I didn't know why, but that moment when his eyes had locked onto my scar, there had been recognition there. Impossible, inexplicable recognition. I finally forced myself to move, to head toward the subway, to return to my small studio apartment where the heat barely worked and the ceiling leaked in 3 places. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I just stepped into a story that had started long before tonight, one that had been waiting 15 years to continue. The card felt like it was burning a hole in my pocket. I told myself I'd throw it away when I got home. I told myself I'd forget about the stranger in the Mercedes, about the way he'd looked at my scar, about the intensity in those dark eyes that had sent shivers down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold rain. I told myself a lot of things that night. None of them turned out to be true. 7 days passed. 7 days of trying to focus on editing photographs, of submitting my portfolio to galleries that would probably reject it, of eating ramen and trying not to think about the man from the accident. I'd looked up the name on the card, Marco Vitali, and found exactly nothing. No social media, no professional profiles, just a few vague mentions in business articles about real estate development and restaurant investments in Boston's North End. The lack of information should have been my first clue. In the age of digital footprints and online presence, only 2 types of people stayed invisible: those with nothing to hide and those with everything to hide. Marco Vitali clearly fell into the latter category. I was sitting in my favorite coffee shop, the one near Faneuil Hall where they didn't mind if you nursed a single cup for 3 hours while you worked, when the atmosphere changed. It was subtle at first, a shift in the ambient noise, conversations dropping off, the barista's smile becoming slightly strained. Then I felt it, that prickling awareness of being watched. I looked up from my laptop to find him standing just inside the doorway, and my breath caught in my throat. Marco Vitali looked nothing like the bleeding, trapped man from a week ago. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my entire year's rent, tailored perfectly to his broad shoulders and lean frame. His dark hair was styled back from his face, revealing sharp cheekbones and that strong jaw I remembered. The cut on his temple had healed to a thin red line that somehow made him look more dangerous rather than vulnerable. But it was his eyes that held me captive, deep brown, almost black, currently fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin flush despite the November chill seeping through the coffee shop's windows. He moved toward my table with the kind of confidence that suggested he'd never been told no in his life. People shifted out of his way without seeming to realize they were doing it, creating a path like the Red Sea parting. 2 of his seated men, Anthony was one of them, I realized took up positions near the door and windows, casual, watchful. Miss Chun. His voice was deeper than I expected, with a slight rasp that suggested he didn't use it often for pleasantries. May I sit? I should have said no. Every instinct I developed growing up in foster care, learning to read people and situations for signs of danger, was screaming at me. But I was also curious, desperately curious about why this man had looked at my scar like it meant something. It's a free country, I said, proud that my voice didn't shake. Though I get the feeling you're not really asking. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I'm always asking, Sarah. May I call you Sarah? He sat without waiting for permission, his movements controlled and graceful. Up close, I could see the faint shadows under his eyes, the subtle signs of pain he was hiding. He shouldn't have been up and walking around yet, much less sitting in coffee shops. You should still be in the hospital, I said instead of answering his question. I had good motivation to leave. His eyes dropped to my wrist where my usual stack of leather bracelets covered the scar. I needed to find you. My heart kicked against my ribs. Why, I just helped at an accident. Anyone would have... No. The word was soft but absolute. Not anyone, you? He reached across the table slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, his fingers gently circled my wrist, thumb pressing lightly against the bracelets. May I? I should have said no. I should have pulled away, stood up, left. Instead, I found myself nodding, watching as he carefully pushed the bracelets up my forearm, exposing the scar I'd spent 15 years hiding. The change in his expression was subtle but profound. His jaw tightened, his eyes darkened, and for a moment, I saw something raw and vulnerable cross his face before he locked it down. His thumb traced the thin white line with a reverence that made my throat tight. 15 years, he said quietly, almost to himself. 15 years I've been looking for this scar. What? The word came out as barely a whisper. His eyes met mine, and the intensity in them nearly knocked me backward. You don't remember me. I didn't think you would. I was just a kid, and it was dark, and you were so focused on saving me that you probably didn't even look at my face. Pieces started clicking together in my mind, fragments of a memory I tried hard to forget. A summer night when I was 12. Walking home along the Charles River after leaving my foster home following another fight. Seeing the car swerve off the road, watching it hit the barrier and plunge into the water. Running toward it while everyone else ran away. Diving into the dark water, finding the car settling on the muddy bottom. A little boy's face, pale and terrified, pressed against the back window, breaking the glass with a rock. Cutting my hand, dragging him out, both of us choking and gasping. Getting him to shore. Then running away before the police and ambulances arrived because I was a foster kid with a record of running away and I knew how that story would end. The boy in the river, I breathed. That was you? That was me. His voice was rough with emotion. My father put me in that car. He drove it to the river. He told me I was weak, that I cried too much, that I'd never survive in his world. Then he pushed the car into the water and left me to drown. Horror and old grief crashed over me. I'd known, even at 12, that the boy in the car hadn't gotten there by accident. I'd seen the adult-sized footprints leading away from the riverbank, heard the witnesses talking about a man walking away while his car sank. But I'd been a child myself, too scared to get involved, too focused on survival to think about the bigger picture. Marco, I didn't even realize I'd used his first name until it was out. I'm so sorry. Sorry? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Sarah, you saved my life. You cut your hand open on broken glass to pull me out of that car. You gave me CPR on the riverbank until I was breathing again. Then you disappeared before I could even thank you. His thumb pressed gently against my scar. This is the only piece of you I had to remember. I knew that someday, somehow, I'd find the girl with the scar on her wrist who chose to save a stranger's life at her own expense. You've been looking for me for 15 years? The idea was overwhelming, impossible to process. Every day since I was old enough to start looking. He released my wrist but didn't pull away completely, his hand resting on the table between us. I had resources, money, connections, but you were a ghost. No records, no trail. Sarah Chun didn't exist 15 years ago, because I'd been Sarah Rodriguez back then, a foster kid in the system. I'd changed my name when I aged out, wanting to leave that life behind, to become someone new. Someone who didn't carry the weight of abandonment and temporary families. I changed my name, I admitted. When I turned 18, understanding flickered in his eyes. Foster care? I nodded. How he guessed that so quickly, I didn't know, but something in his expression said he understood more than most people ever would. Then we're both survivors, he said quietly. Both of us pulled from the wreckage of our childhoods and forced to rebuild ourselves. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. I owe you my life, Sarah. Everything I am, everything I've built exists because you chose to dive into that river instead of walking away. I didn't do it for a reward, I said quickly. I didn't do it so you'd owe me anything. I know. That's what makes you extraordinary. He shifted slightly and I caught a wince of pain before he controlled it. He was definitely pushing himself too hard too soon after the accident. But whether you want it or not, I am in your debt. And I pay my debts. I don't want your money. Good, because what I'm offering isn't money. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder, placed it on the table between us. I own several legitimate businesses. Restaurants, hotels, a gallery in the North End. They all need photography, professional, artistic photography. Your work is exactly what I've been looking for. I stared at the folder without touching it. You've seen my work? I've seen everything. At my sharp look, he had the grace to look slightly apologetic. After the accident, when I woke up in the hospital and realized you were the one who'd helped me, I had Anthony find out everything about you. Your apartment, your work, your financial situation. I know you're 3 months behind on rent. I know you've been rejected by 17 galleries in the past 2 months. I know you're talented enough to deserve better than eating ramen 3 times a day and choosing between heat and electricity. Anger flared hot in my chest. You had no right. I had every right. His voice hardened slightly. You saved my life twice, Sarah. Once when we were children, and once last week when you could have walked away but didn't. I have the right to make sure you're taken care of. I can take care of myself. I know you can. You've been doing it since you were 12. His expression softened. But you shouldn't have to. Not anymore. So what? I'm supposed to be your charity case? The poor photographer you throw money at to ease your conscience? No, he pushed the folder closer. You're supposed to be my photographer because you're brilliant and I need someone brilliant. The fact that it also allows me to help you is just convenient. I wanted to refuse. I wanted to throw the folder back in his face and walk out with my pride intact. But pride didn't pay rent. Pride didn't buy camera equipment or film or the basic necessities I've been skimping on for months. And beneath the anger was a traitorous curiosity about what was in that folder, what he was really offering. What exactly would this job entail? I asked, hating how defeated I sounded. Photography for my restaurants and hotels. Marketing materials, website images, promotional content. I'd also want you to document some of my business meetings, create a visual archive of my operations. He paused, and I'd want your artistic work. The real stuff, the photographs you actually care about. I'll fund a solo exhibition at my gallery, full creative control. It was too good to be true. There had to be a catch, some string attached that would wrap around my throat and strangle me. Why? Because 15 years ago, a 12-year-old girl looked at a drowning boy and chose to act instead of standing by. Because last week, a struggling photographer ran toward a car crash when everyone else ran away. Because you have a good heart, Sarah, and the world doesn't have enough of those. He leaned forward slightly. And because I've spent 15 years trying to figure out how to thank you, and this is the only way I know how. My eyes stung with unexpected tears. I blinked them back furiously. This is too much. It's not nearly enough. His hand moved across the table, stopping just short of touching mine, close enough that I could feel the heat of his skin. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm not asking you to like me. I'm just asking you to let me give you the opportunity you deserve. What you do with it is entirely up to you. I looked down at the folder, then at his hand hovering near mine, then at his face. There was something in his expression that tugged at old memories, the ghost of that terrified little boy I pulled from the river, overlaid with the dangerous, powerful man he'd become. Whatever he was, whatever he'd done to build his empire, I couldn't deny the fundamental truth. I had saved him, and now he wanted to save me. Maybe that made me weak. Maybe I regret this. But I was tired of struggling, tired of choosing between my art and basic survival, tired of proving I could do everything alone. Okay, I heard myself say. I'll look at the contract. The smile that crossed his face transformed him, stripping away years and hardness until I could almost see the boy he'd been. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I haven't agreed to anything. But you will. It wasn't arrogance, just certainty. He stood, moving with careful control that couldn't quite hide his lingering injuries. Anthony will be in touch with the contract details. Take your time reviewing it. Use a lawyer if you want. I want you to feel comfortable with this arrangement. He turned to leave, his men falling into formation around him when I called out, Marco? He stopped, looked back. The scar, I said, touching my wrist. You said it's the only piece of me you had to remember. But you found me now. Why does it still matter so much? His eyes met mine, and the intensity in them sent heat spiraling through my chest. Because every time I thought about giving up, about letting the darkness win, I'd look at this. He pushed up his sleeve, revealing his own wrist. My breath caught. There on the inside of his wrist was a tattoo. An exact replica of my scar, rendered in precise white ink against his olive skin. A permanent reminder of the girl who'd saved him, carried on his body every day for 15 years. "It matters," he said quietly, "because you matter. You always have." Then he was gone, leaving me alone in the coffee shop with a folder full of possibilities and a heart beating so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I sat there for a long time, staring at the folder, replaying the conversation in my mind. The rational part of my brain was screaming warnings about mysterious men with too much money and too many secrets, about debts and obligations, about the dangerous chemistry I'd felt crackling between us. But the part of me that had jumped into a river to save a drowning child, the part that ran toward car crashes instead of away, the part that believed in choosing action over fear, that part was already opening the folder, already imagining what I could create with the resources he was offering. Inside was a contract, professionally drafted and surprisingly straightforward. A salary that made my head spin, benefits, equipment allowance, gallery space for a solo exhibition with his gallery covering all costs, and a clause that specified I retained full ownership and control of all my artistic work. There were also photographs, prints of my own work that I'd submitted to various galleries. He'd collected them, every single rejection transformed into a portfolio that someone had actually seen and valued. Notes were attached, written in decisive handwriting. For the hotel lobby, restaurant menu design. This one framed it for my office. He'd been planning this before the accident, I realized, before he even knew who I was. He'd seen my work somewhere somehow and decided he wanted it. The accident had just given him a reason to find me, to make the offer in person. The last item in the folder was a photograph I didn't recognize at first. It was old, printed on cheap paper that had yellowed with age. It showed a young boy, maybe 10 or 11, standing beside a river. He wasn't looking at the camera but at the water, his expression solemn and haunted. On the back, written in that same decisive handwriting, "The day after you saved me. I came back to look for you. You were already gone." I traced the image with my finger, seeing past the child to the man he'd become, seeing the thread that connected that terrified boy to the powerful figure who'd sat across from me. He'd been carrying this photograph for 15 years, just as he'd been carrying the memory of my scar. My phone buzzed. An unknown number, but I knew who it was before I opened the message. "The offer stands for as long as you need. But I hope you don't need too long. I've waited 15 years to properly thank you. I'd rather not wait 15 more. I looked at the contract, at the photographs, at that image of a boy by a river. I thought about the scar on my wrist and the matching tattoo on his. About the way his fingers had trembled slightly when he touched it. About the raw emotion I'd seen in his eyes before he locked it away. This was dangerous. This was complicated. This was almost certainly a terrible idea. I pulled out my phone and typed a response. "I'll sign the contract. But we need to set some ground rules. This is business, nothing more." His reply came almost instantly. "Whatever you need to tell yourself, piccola salvatrice. I'll have Anthony bring the papers tomorrow." Piccola salvatrice. I'd have to look up what that meant. But something about the way the Italian words looked on my screen, intimate and possessive, sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the coffee shop's inadequate heating. I gathered my things, tucking the folder carefully into my camera bag, and headed out into the Boston afternoon. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the city washed clean and glittering under weak November sunlight. Something fundamental had shifted in my life today. I could feel it in my bones, and the way my scar tingled with phantom warmth, and the rapid beating of my heart. I'd spent 15 years trying to forget that night by the river, trying to move past the memory of a drowning child and the choice I'd made. Now that child had found me, grown into a man who looked at me like I was something precious and breakable, who'd spent 15 years carrying my scar on his skin and my memory in his heart. I didn't know what Marco Vitelli really was, what darkness he'd survived to become the man he was today. I didn't know if taking his offer made me smart or stupid, brave or reckless. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty: my life would never be the same again. The question was whether that was a promise or a threat. Anthony Russo appeared at my apartment at exactly 9 the next morning, carrying a leather portfolio and an expression that suggested he'd seen and heard everything worth seeing and hearing in his life and was impressed by none of it. "Miss Chun." He nodded once, polite but professional. "May I come in?" I stepped aside, acutely aware of how shabby my studio apartment must look to someone who clearly lived in a different tax bracket. The ceiling leak had created a new water stain overnight. My secondhand furniture was a mismatched collection of survival rather than style, and my kitchen was basically a hot plate and a mini fridge. If Anthony noticed or judged, he didn't show it. He simply set the portfolio on my rickety table and opened it with careful precision. The contract, as discussed. Mr. Vitelli asked me to go over any questions you might have. He pulled out a thick stack of papers, tabbed and organized. He also asked me to emphasize that you should have a lawyer review this before signing. I can't afford a lawyer. Mr. Vitelli anticipated that. Anthony produced a business card. Marcus Delgado, one of the best contract lawyers in Boston. He's expecting your call and has been retained to represent your interests in this matter. His fees are already paid. Of course they were. I took the card, running my thumb over the embossed lettering. Marco thinks of everything, doesn't he? Mr. Vitelli didn't survive his childhood by leaving things to chance. Anthony's expression softened almost imperceptibly. He's a good man, Miss Chen. Whatever you might hear, whatever you might learn about him, remember that. He's a good man who's had to do hard things to protect the people he cares about. There was a warning in those words, buried under the respectful tone. A warning that I was entering a world with different rules, different consequences. A warning that the man who'd sat across from me in the coffee shop, looking at me like on the moon, was also someone capable of the hard things Anthony referenced. What kind of hard things? I asked, even though part of me didn't want to know the answer. Anthony's pause was eloquent. Mr. Vitelli runs several legitimate businesses. He also manages certain family interests that have been in place for generations. The Vitelli name carries weight in Boston, Miss Chen, respect. And sometimes fear. He met my eyes. He would never hurt you. That's not the concern. The concern is that being associated with him might put you in situations you're not prepared for. You mean danger. I mean attention, scrutiny, questions from people you don't want asking questions. He tapped the contract. This is legitimate work for legitimate businesses. But the man offering it is complicated. You should know that before you sign. I appreciated the honesty even as it sent anxiety spiraling through my gut. Is he what people think he is? Mr. Vitelli is exactly what he needs to be to protect his family and his people. Nothing more, nothing less. Anthony's expression was carefully neutral. Your safety is his highest priority. As long as you're under his protection, no one will touch you. But that protection comes with complications. Like what? Like the fact that every rival family in Boston will want to know who you are and why Marco Vitelli cares so much about you. Like the fact that his enemies might try to use you to hurt him. Like the fact that once you're in his world, it's very difficult to leave. He paused. I'm not telling you this to scare you away. I'm telling you this because Mr. Vitelli would want you to make an informed decision. I sank into one of my mismatched chairs, the weight of what I was considering settling over me. He said this was just a job. It is. But jobs for Marco Vitelli come with considerations. Anthony's voice gentled. He cares about you, Miss Chen, more than I've seen him care about anyone in the 15 years I've worked for him. That makes you important. And in our world, important people need to be protected. I don't need protection. Everyone needs protection eventually. He pushed the contract toward me. Read this, call Marcus. Make your decision with full knowledge of what you're accepting. Mr. Vitelli. We'll respect whatever choice you make. After Anthony left, I sat with the contract for hours, reading every clause, every specification, every carefully worded phrase. It was exactly what Marco had promised: work, pay, creative control, opportunity, nothing hidden, nothing sinister. But Anthony's words echoed in my mind. In our world, family interests, respect and fear. I pulled out my laptop and started searching. Really searching this time, going past the surface results to dig into Boston's history. The North End's Italian community, the whispers and rumors that never made it into mainstream news. The Vitelli family had been in Boston for 4 generations. They'd started as immigrants, worked their way up through construction and restaurants, built an empire of legitimate businesses. But beneath that respectable surface, there were other stories. Connections to organized crime. Allegations that never quite stuck. Investigations that mysteriously stalled. A pattern of violence always happening near Vitelli properties, but never traceable back to the family itself. Marco's father, Giovanni Vitelli, had died in prison 15 years ago, murdered by a rival inmate officially. But the timing just months after his car was pulled from the Charles River with signs of tampering suggested something else entirely. Marco had been 15 when his father died, the same age I'd been when I aged out of foster care and changed my name. We'd both been children forced to become survivors, both marked by trauma that shaped everything that came after. The difference was the paths we'd chosen. I'd struggled through community college, worked 3 jobs to buy my first camera, built a life of creative poverty but honest work. Marco had apparently walked into his father's organization and taken it over, building something more powerful and more legitimate than what he'd inherited, but keeping one foot in the shadows. I should have walked away. Every logical thought in my brain said to thank him politely, decline the offer, and go back to my struggling artist life with its integrity intact. But I kept thinking about the tattoo on his wrist, about the way he'd looked at me in the coffee shop like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking for 15 years, about that photograph of a boy standing by a river looking for the girl who'd saved him. I picked up my phone and called the lawyer. Marcus Delgado answered on the second ring, his voice professional but warm. We talked for an hour. He went through the contract line by line, explained every clause, answered every question. At the end, his assessment was simple. This is the cleanest, most favorable contract I've seen in 20 years of practice. Either Marco Vitelli is a terrible businessman or you're someone very special to him. Can I trust him? I asked, the question that really mattered. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. I've known Marco since he was 17 years old. I helped him navigate the legal requirements when he took over his family's businesses. I've seen him make hard choices and live with the consequences. I've seen him be ruthless with enemies and generous with friends. He paused. If Marco Vitelli gives you his word, you can take that to the bank. He doesn't lie and he doesn't break promises. Whatever else he is, he's a man of honor. That night, I signed the contract. I told myself it was just business, just a job, just an opportunity too good to pass up. I told myself the way my heart raced when I wrote my signature had nothing to do with the man offering the contract and everything to do with the financial security it represented. I told myself I wasn't falling into something dangerous and intoxicating and inevitable. I told myself a lot of lies that night. But when I sent the signed contract to Anthony's email address, adding a simple message, "I'm in," the truth was undeniable. I wasn't just accepting a job. I was accepting Marco Vitelli's presence in my life. I was opening a door that had been closed for 15 years, stepping into a story that had started with a drowning boy and a girl with a scar and had been waiting all this time to continue. The reply came within minutes. Not from Anthony, but from Marco himself. "Thank you for trusting me, Piccola Salvatrice. I won't let you down. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. my office. We'll discuss your first assignment. And Sarah, I'm glad you're in. I've been waiting 15 years to work with you." I looked up the Italian phrase finally. Piccola Salvatrice, little savior. The endearment sent warmth spiraling through my chest, intimate and possessive in ways that should have scared me but didn't. He'd been calling me that in his head for 15 years, I realized, carrying the memory of his little savior through everything he'd survived and become. I was so far out of my depth. I was swimming in waters I didn't understand, with currents that could pull me under before I even realized I was drowning. But I jumped into a river once to save a stranger, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Maybe that made me brave. Maybe it made me stupid. Maybe it made me exactly the kind of person who'd fall in love with a dangerous man and call it destiny. I didn't know yet, but I was about to find out. Marco Vitelli's office was nothing like I expected. I'd imagined something dark and imposing, all leather and mahogany designed to intimidate. Instead, I found myself in a penthouse space flooded with natural light, modern furniture and clean lines, and most surprisingly photographs covering every available wall. Not just any photographs, my photographs. I stood frozen in the doorway, staring at images I'd taken over the years. The homeless veteran's hands. Children in the spray from a hydrant. A woman crying on a subway platform. A street musician lost in his performance. Every rejection, every piece I'd been told wasn't commercial enough was here professionally framed and displayed like they were worth something. Like they were worth everything. "I told you your work was exactly what I was looking for," Marco's voice came from behind me, low and warm. I wasn't lying. I turned to find him standing in the doorway of an inner office, dressed more casually than before in dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. Even without the suit jacket, he radiated authority, power, and something else, vulnerability, maybe in the way he watched my reaction to seeing my work displayed. You bought all of these? My voice came out scratchy. From the galleries that rejected you. They were happy to sell. He moved into the room and I noticed he was favoring his left side slightly. Still healing from the accident. I had to promise not to reveal where they came from. Apparently it looks bad when a gallery sells work they claimed wasn't good enough to exhibit. You could get them in trouble? I could. His smile was sharp. But I won't. They gave me something I wanted, even if they didn't know what they had. He gestured to the photographs. These are going in my restaurants and hotels. The originals will stay here where I can see them every day. I'll need you to create new work for the public spaces. I moved closer to the nearest frame. A shot I'd taken of the Boston harbor at dawn, mist rising from the water, a lone figure on the dock. I'd love this photograph. I'd also been told it was too melancholy for commercial use. Why these? I asked. Why not pretty pictures of the city, tourist shots? Because these tell the truth. He came to stand beside me close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. They show Boston as it really is, beautiful and broken. Hopeful and hard, real. His eyes met mine. You see the world the way I do, Sarah. You see past the surface to the story underneath. The intensity in his gaze made my breath catch. This close, I could see the faint scar in his temple from the accident, could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle, cedar and citrus. Could feel the magnetic pull I've been trying to ignore since the coffee shop. I don't think we see the world the same way at all, I managed. I see beauty. You see, what? Power? Control? I see survival. He reached out slowly, giving me time to step back and touch the bracelet covering my scar. I see people making impossible choices and living with the consequences. I see strength in unexpected places. His thumb brushed my wrist, and even through the leather, I felt it like a brand. I see a 12-year-old girl who chose to jump into a river when every instinct probably said to run away. That was a long time ago. Not to me. His hand didn't move. To me, it's yesterday. It's every day. It's the reason I'm standing here instead of at the bottom of the Charles River. I should have pulled away. Should have maintained professional distance. Should have reminded him this was just business. Instead, I heard myself ask, what happened to your father? After the accident? Marco's expression hardened, the vulnerability shuddering behind walls I could almost see him building. He went to prison, attempted murder among other charges. He died there 6 months later. I'm sorry. Don't be. His voice was flat, emotionless in a way that suggested enormous emotion buried deep. He tried to kill me because I cried when he hit my mother. Because I asked why he hurt people. Because I was weak. The last word dripped with the venom of someone who'd heard it too many times. His death freed me to become something other than his disappointment. You're not weak. The words came out fierce, certain. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. No, not anymore. He made sure of that. He finally released my wrist, stepped back, putting professional distance between us. But we're not here to discuss my father. We're here to discuss your first assignment. The shift from personal to professional was jarring, but probably necessary. I let him guide me to a conference table where a large portfolio waited. I'm opening a new restaurant in the North End next month. Julian is named after my grandmother. He opened the portfolio to reveal architectural plans and design sketches. I want you to document the entire process. Construction to opening night. The workers, the space, the food, the people. Tell the story of how a restaurant is born. I've studied the plans, my photographer's mind already seeing angles and compositions. This is beautiful. The design is incredible. My mother's dream. His voice softened. She always wanted to open a restaurant, serve the recipes her mother taught her. My father said it was foolish that we had enough restaurants, that her place was at home. His jaw tightened. She died before she could see it happen. So I'm building it for her. The grief in his voice was raw, unguarded. I looked up and saw that vulnerability again, the boy who'd lost his mother showing through the powerful man he'd become. She'd be proud of you, I said quietly. Would she? He laughed, bitter. I built this empire on the foundation my father laid. I used methods he taught me. I run the same organizations he ran, just cleaner, more legitimate. Would she be proud of that? You're building a restaurant in her honor. You're preserving her recipes. You're trying to do better than your father did. I held his gaze. Yes, she'd be proud. Something shifted in his expression, softening the hard lines, easing the tension. You always know exactly what to say, don't you? Even when we were children. You talked to me the whole time you were pulling me from that car, told me it would be okay, told me to hold on, told me I was brave. He paused. You were the first person who ever said that to me. My throat tightened. You were brave. You are brave. Or just well-trained in hiding fear. He closed the portfolio. Will you do it? Document Juliana's from beginning to end? Yes. I didn't even have to think about it. This was exactly the kind of project I dreamed of, meaningful, story-driven, with creative freedom. When do I start? Today, if you're available, the construction crew is there now. Anthony can drive you. He hesitated. Unless you prefer I take you myself? The offer hung between us, weighted with implications. If I said yes, this stopped being just business. If I said yes, I acknowledged the current running between us, the connection that went deeper than photographer and client. I can take the tea, I said, choosing the coward's option. I know the North End. Disappointment flickered across his face before he masked it. Of course. But take Anthony anyway. The neighborhood can be complicated. I feel better knowing you were safe. Translation. His presence in the North End meant potential danger from rivals who might see an unprotected woman as an opportunity. All right, I agreed. Anthony can drive me. Good. He stood and I realized our meeting was over. Professional, efficient, exactly what I'd asked for. So why did I feel disappointed? I'll have him bring you a company phone. If you need anything at all, you call me directly. Day or night. Marco, I can take care of myself. I know you can. He moved around the table, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. But you don't have to anymore. That's what I'm trying to tell you, Sarah. You jumped into a river from me when you were 12. You ran toward a car crash from me when you didn't even know who I was. Let me give you something back. Let me make sure you're safe and taken care of. This job already does that. The job is separate from this. His hand came up, hovering near my face without quite touching. This is personal. You're personal. You've been personal for 15 years, even when I didn't know your name or your face. You were the standard I measured everyone against. The proof that goodness existed in the world. The reason I kept trying to be better than my father. My heart hammered against my ribs. Marco, I'm not asking for anything you're not ready to give. His hand dropped. I'm just asking you to let me care about you. To let me protect you. To let me be in your life the way you've been in mine, even when you didn't know it. I should have said no. Should have maintained boundaries. Should have protected myself from the intensity of whatever this was between us. But I'd spent 15 years choosing safety over risk, independence over connection, survival over truly living. Okay, I whispered. Okay. His smile transformed his face, bright and genuine and absolutely devastating. Thank you. He stepped back, professional distance restored, though his eyes still burned with everything he wasn't saying. Anthony's waiting downstairs. He'll take you to Juliana's. I gathered my camera bag, hyper aware of him watching me move through his office, past the photographs he collected like he was collecting pieces of me. At the door, I turned back. He was standing by the window, silhouetted against the Boston skyline, looking every inch the powerful man he was. But I could still see the boy in him, still see the child who'd been thrown away and had climbed back out of darkness through sheer will. Marco, thank you for this opportunity, for believing in my work. I don't believe in your work, Sarah. His voice carried across the space between us. I know your work is extraordinary. There's a difference. He paused. And someday, when you're ready, I'm going to tell you all the other things I know about you. All the ways you're extraordinary beyond your photography. He was going to break my heart. I could see it coming like a train in the distance, inevitable, unstoppable. This man who'd spent 15 years looking for me, who wore my scar in his skin, who looked at me like I was salvation itself. I was going to let him. I'll see you soon, I said instead of all the things I was thinking. Tomorrow. I'll come to the site, check on progress. His eyes held mine. I want to see your work. See what you create. It's just a construction site. Nothing is just anything when you're the one seeing it. He turned back to the window. Go, Anthony's waiting, but Sarah? I paused. Be careful in the North End. My name protects you, but it also makes you interesting to people who shouldn't be interested. A chill ran down my spine. Are you trying to scare me? I'm trying to prepare you. He glanced over his shoulder. My world isn't the one you've lived in. It has different rules, different dangers. I need you to understand that. I'm starting to. I thought about Anthony's warnings, about the research I'd done, about all the things Marco wasn't saying. Why me, Marco? Really? Why go to all this trouble for someone you met twice, 15 years apart? He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, because when I was drowning, you dived in. Because when everyone else was running away, you ran toward danger. Because you looked at a stranger's child and decided his life was worth risking yours for. He met my eyes fully. Because in a world that taught me everyone has a price and nothing is free, you gave me everything and asked for nothing in return. That kind of person is rare, Sarah. When you find someone like that, you don't let them go. I left before I could do something stupid like cross the room and touch him. Before I could close the distance between us and explore the attraction that crackled through the air like lightning. Anthony was indeed waiting downstairs, standing beside a black Mercedes that was probably bulletproof. He opened the door without comment, professional and efficient. As we drove through Boston streets toward the North End, I watched the city flow past and thought about choices and consequences. About how saving one life could ripple outward in ways you never anticipated. About how 15 years could pass in an instant when destiny finally caught up with you. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number that I somehow knew was Marco. Piccola Salvatrice, thank you for jumping in. Again. N. I saved the number, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Finally, I typed back. I'm starting to think jumping in is the only thing I know how to do. His response came immediately, then we're well matched. I only know how to hold on to what matters. And you, Sarah-chan, you matter more than you know. I clutched the phone, my scar tingling like it could feel his matching tattoo across the distance between us. Anthony's eyes met mine in the rearview mirror. He's a good man, Miss Chen. Whatever happens, remember that. Whatever happens, not if something happens, whatever happens. Like it was inevitable. Like he could already see how this story ended. Maybe he could. Maybe it had been written 15 years ago in the dark water of the Charles River when a girl chose to save a boy and sealed both their fates. I just hoped we both survived what came next. Juliana's was chaos and beauty in equal measure. The construction site hummed with activity workers shouting in Italian and English, the screech of power tools, the smell of sawdust and fresh paint. Anthony walked me through, his presence parting the workers like Moses parting the sea, until we reached a man in a hard hat who was clearly in charge. Tommaso, this is Miss Chen, Mr. Vitelli's photographer. Anthony's introduction was brief but weighted with meaning. She has full access. Whatever she needs. Tommaso, a barrel-chested man in his 50s with kind eyes and calloused hands, broke into a grin. Ah, the photographer. Marco told us he'd be coming. His accent was thick, musical. Welcome, welcome. You want to see everything? I show you everything. For the next 3 hours, I lost myself in my work. This was what I lived for, capturing real moments, real people, real stories. I photographed Tommaso's hands as he checked measurements, the pride in his face as he explained how they were preserving the original exposed brick. I captured young workers learning from old masters, tradition passing from one generation to the next. I photographed the space itself, the way light fell through the windows, the bones of what would become Juliana's, the potential waiting to be realized. Through my lens, I saw what Marco must have envisioned. His mother's dream made real, brick by brick, board by board. I was crouched in a corner, getting a low-angle shot of the ornate ceiling molding when I felt the shift in the room's energy. Conversations dropped off. The rhythmic sound of work faltered. I looked up to find Marco standing in the doorway, and even in jeans and a simple black sweater, he commanded attention. But he wasn't looking at his restaurant. He was looking at me. I lowered my camera, suddenly self-conscious about my old jeans and paint-splattered jacket, about the dust probably smudging my face. Don't stop on my account. His voice carried across the space. I want to see how you work. He crept up my neck, but I raised my camera again, tried to focus on the shot. Except now I was hyper-aware of him watching. of his eyes tracking my movements as I shifted positions, changed angles, lost myself in the familiar rhythm of creation. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I turned the camera on him. Through the lens, Marco Vitelli was different, more real somehow. The careful control he maintained slipped when he thought I wasn't looking directly at him. I caught him touching the exposed brick with something like reverence. Saw the grief that crossed his face when Tommaso mentioned that the original oven was being restored to his mother's specifications. I captured him in conversation with workers, the respect evident in how they spoke to each other. The way an older man, probably one of his father's generation, clasped Marco's shoulder, said something in rapid Italian that made Marco's expression soften. These weren't the photos of a mob boss. These were the photos of a son honoring his mother, a leader caring for his people, a man trying to build something good from a foundation of pain. "You see too much," Marco said quietly. He'd moved closer without my noticing, now standing just a few feet away. "That camera of yours, it sees past all the walls. Maybe that's because the walls aren't as solid as you think." I lowered the camera. "You're not as hard as you pretend to be. Don't be so sure." But his eyes were warm, almost amused. "Tommaso says you've been working nonstop for 3 hours. Have you eaten?" I tried to remember. "I had coffee this morning. Coffee isn't food, Sarah." He shook his head, exasperated and fond. "Come, there's a place nearby. That's sandwiches in the North End." "I should keep working." "You should eat." His tone brooked no argument. "The restaurant will be here tomorrow. Your health won if you keep skipping meals." "How did you know I'd been skipping meals?" I wanted to argue, to maintain my independence, but my stomach betrayed me with an audible growl. Marco's lips twitched. "See? Even your body agrees with me. Come." He offered his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, I took it. His fingers were warm, strong, slightly rough. He pulled me gently to my feet, but didn't immediately let go. "Thank you," he said softly, "for coming today. For seeing what I'm trying to build. It's going to be beautiful. Your mother would love it." Pain flickered across his face, sharp and sudden. "I hope so. I hope somewhere she knows. That she sees I'm trying to do better." Without thinking, I squeezed his hand. "She knows." We stood there for a long moment, hands linked, the construction site buzzing around us. Then Tommaso called out something in Italian that made Marco laugh and reply in the same language. "What did he say?" I asked as Marco finally released my hand and guided me toward the door with a palm on my lower back. "He said I'm keeping the beautiful photographer from her work." Marco's smile was wry. "And that if I'm going to steal you away, I should at least feed you properly." We walked through the North End, and I noticed how people reacted to Marco, some with respect, nodding in greeting. Some with fear, quickly averting their eyes. A few older women called out to him in Italian, and he stopped to chat, kissing cheeks and asking after grandchildren with genuine warmth. "You're different here," I observed. More relaxed. "This is my neighborhood. These are my people." He nodded to an elderly man sweeping a storefront. "I grew up on these streets, learned to survive here. When I took over my father's organization, I made a promise the North End would be safe, protected. A place where people could live and work without fear. Even though your protection comes from being the thing they should fear?" He glanced at me, surprised by my directness. "Yes, even though." We turned down a narrow street, stopping in front of a tiny sandwich shop with a faded awning. "Paradox is the nature of my world, Sarah. I'm the monster that keeps other monsters away." Inside, the shop was cramped and wonderful, smelling of fresh bread and cured meats. The woman behind the counter took one look at Marco and broke into rapid Italian, arms waving expressively. He responded in kind, the language flowing naturally, his whole demeanor transforming. He was beautiful like this, I realized. Animated and unguarded, laughing at something the woman said, teasing our back. This was Marco without the weight of his name, without the burden of his empire. "Nonna Maria says you're too skinny," he told me, still smiling. "She's making you her special." No arguments allowed. I wasn't going to argue. Smart woman. He guided me to a tiny table by the window. Nonna Maria raised me after my mother died. Fed me when my father forgot I needed to eat. Taught me that food is love and love is sacred. The sandwiches arrived, massive, impossible creations that defied the laws of physics. Prosciutto, fresh mozzarella, roasted peppers, pesto. I took a bite and nearly moaned. It was possibly the best thing I'd ever tasted. Marco watched me eat with undisguised satisfaction. Good? Incredible, I took another bite. How did you end up living with Nonna Maria? After my mother died, my father didn't know what to do with a grieving 10-year-old. He'd just tried to kill me, gone to prison for it. I was a reminder of everything he'd lost, everything he'd done wrong. Marco's voice was matter of fact, but I heard the old pain underneath. Nonna Maria was his mother-in-law. She took me in even though it meant going against her own son's wishes. She loved me when I was unlovable. You were never unlovable. You were a child who'd been hurt. I was angry, destructive. I broke things, fought other kids. Got in trouble constantly. He stared at his sandwich without seeing it. I was drowning again, but this time on dry land. No one could save me from that. But Nonna Maria tried. She did more than try. She succeeded. He looked up and his eyes were bright with unshed tears. She taught me that strength isn't about violence. That power without compassion is just tyranny. That the worst thing my father did wasn't trying to kill me, it was making me believe I deserved it. My throat closed. I reached across the small table, covered his hand with mine. You didn't deserve any of it. No, but I survived it. And Nonna Maria made sure I survived it as someone who could still feel, still care, still choose to be better than my father. He turned his hand over, lacing our fingers together. Then I found out who you were, my piccola salvatrice, grown into this extraordinary woman. And I thought maybe Nonna Maria was right. Maybe I survived for a reason. What reason? To find you again. To thank you properly. He trailed off, jaw tightening like he was holding back words. To see if the girl who saved my life might also save me from becoming the monster my father was. Marco. His name was barely a whisper. I can't save you from yourself. No one can do that but you. I know. But maybe you can remind me why I want to be saved. His thumb brushed across my knuckles. Maybe that's enough. Nonna Maria appeared at our table, rapid Italian flowing from her lips as she looked between us with sharp, knowing eyes. Marco responded, and whatever he said made her smile broadly and pat his cheek with obvious affection. What was that about? I asked when she'd gone back behind the counter. She said you have kind eyes. That you see him clearly. His expression was soft. She said I should hold on to you. Him? Me, but she always speaks in third person when she's being profound. It's an Italian grandmother thing. He squeezed my hand gently before releasing it. She also said if I hurt you, she hit me with her rolling pin. I laughed despite the emotional heaviness of the moment. I like Nonna Maria. Everyone likes Nonna Maria. It's impossible not to. He picked up his sandwich. Eat. You need your strength. This is just the beginning. The beginning of what? His eyes met mine, dark and intense and full of promises he wasn't quite making yet. Everything. We ate in comfortable silence, the kind that speaks to deeper connection rather than awkwardness. I watched him through my photographer's eye, cataloging details. The way he held his sandwich like a normal person, not a mob boss. The small smile that played at his lips when he caught me staring. The unconscious grace in his movements, even doing something as simple as eating lunch. Tell me about your art, he said eventually. Not the commercial work. The photographs you take for yourself. Why? Because I want to understand how you see the world. He leaned back in his chair. You capture moments most people miss. The beauty in broken places. The dignity in struggle. What draws you to those subjects? I considered my answer carefully. I photograph what I know. I grew up in foster care, bouncing between homes, never quite belonging anywhere. I learned to see the spaces between things, between families, between communities, between the life people show the world and the truth they live with. I traced patterns on the table. My photographs are about those spaces. About the people who live there. About finding light in darkness, like you found me in that river. Maybe. I met his eyes. Or maybe I photographed the things I wish someone had seen in me. The worth in unwanted children. The strength in struggling artists. The hope in broken people. You're not broken, Sarah. Neither are you. But we're both cracked enough to let the light in, aren't we? I smiled sadly. That's what makes us interesting. His expression shifted, something raw and vulnerable crossing his face. Do you know what I see when I look at you? What? proof that goodness exists, that courage is real, that one person can make a difference. He leaned forward. You changed my entire life with one choice. You didn't know me, didn't know if I deserved saving. You just saw a child in danger and acted. That's extraordinary, Sarah. That's the rarest kind of beauty. I'm not extraordinary. I'm just someone who couldn't walk away. That's exactly what makes you extraordinary. His phone buzzed and he glanced at it with obvious annoyance. I have to take this. Business? He stood, stepping outside to answer. Through the window, I watched him transform. The relaxed man who'd eaten sandwiches with me disappeared, replaced by someone harder, colder. His voice was sharp as he spoke rapid Italian, his free hand gesturing with controlled aggression. This was the Marco people feared: decisive, uncompromising, dangerous. But I'd seen the other side now. The boy who loved his Nonna, the son honoring his mother. The man who looked at me like I'd hung the stars. He was both people. Light and shadow, savior and threat. And I was falling for him anyway. When he returned, the hardness took a moment to fade. I'm sorry, that was none of my business, I finished. I know. Actually, I was going to say unavoidable. But you're not wrong either. He sat down, running a hand through his hair. There are parts of my life I can't share with you. Not because I don't want to, but because knowing certain things would make you complicit. I won't do that to you. So I'm supposed to just accept that part of you lives in a world I can't see? Yes. No apology in his voice. That's the price of being in my life, Sarah. Some doors stay closed. Some questions don't get answered. Can you live with that? Could I? I thought about all the things I'd already guessed, all the warnings I'd ignored. Thought about the fact that I'd signed a contract, started a job, let this man into my life knowing he was dangerous. I think I already have been, I admitted. Living with it, I mean. From the moment I signed that contract. The contract can be dissolved. If you want out, I don't. The words came out firm, certain. I don't want out. What did I want? To photograph his restaurant, to understand him? To explore this magnetic pull between us? I want to see where this goes. This, whatever this is. The job, I gestured between us. Connection. His smile was slow, devastating. The connection between us isn't about the job, Sarah. The job is just my excuse to keep you close while I figure out how to tell you the truth. What truth? That I've been half in love with you for 15 years. That seeing you again didn't feel like meeting a stranger, but like coming home. That every day since the accident, I wake up thinking about you and fall asleep wondering if you're thinking about me too. He stood, dropped money on the table. That's the truth, piccola salvatrice. And it terrifies me more than any rival family or FBI investigation ever could. He walked out before I could respond, leaving me sitting in Nonna Maria's shop with my heart pounding and my world tilting on its axis. Half in love with me for 15 years, it should have scared me, should have sent me running. Instead, it felt like inevitability. Like a story that had started with 2 children in a river and was finally, after 15 years of waiting, ready to continue. I gathered my things and followed him outside. He was leaning against a car, hands in his pockets, looking up at the gray November sky like it held answers. Marco, he looked at me and the vulnerability in his expression nearly undid me. I'm thinking about you too, I said quietly. All the time. Even though I probably shouldn't be. His exhale was shaky with relief. Probably? Definitely shouldn't be. You're dangerous. Complicated. Your world has rules I don't understand. I stepped closer. But I can't seem to care about that as much as I should. Tell me to stay away. Tell me you just want the job, nothing more. His voice was rough. Give me a reason to do the right thing and keep my distance. What if I don't want you to keep your distance? The air between us crackled with tension. His eyes dropped to my lips and I saw him fight the urge to close the space between us. You don't know what you're asking for. Then tell me. Explain it. Make me understand. I touched his chest, felt his heart racing under my palm. Because right now, all I know is that you look at me like I matter, like I'm something precious. And I haven't felt like that in. Ever, Marco, I've never felt like that. His hand came up to cover mine. You are precious. You're the most important person in my world, and you have been since you were 12 years old. That's what scares me. If something happened to you because of me, because of my world. He shook his head. I couldn't survive that. So we're both scared. That seems like a good reason to be careful, not to run away. Careful? He laughed without humor. I don't know how to be careful with you, Sarah. I've wanted to find you for half my life. Now that I have, every instinct says to hold on and never let go. So hold on. The words felt momentous, like stepping off a cliff. I'm not going anywhere. For a long moment, we just stood there, my hand on his chest, his covering it. The space between us charged with possibility and danger and something that felt terrifyingly close to destiny. Then his phone buzzed again, shattering the moment. He swore in Italian, pulled it out, and his expression went cold. I have to go, now. He looked at me, conflict written across his face. Anthony will take you home. Don't go back to the site today. Don't go anywhere alone. Stay in your apartment until you hear from me. Fear sliced through me. What's wrong? Nothing you need to worry about, just, please, Sarah, for once, don't argue. Just let me know you're safe. The intensity in his voice, the fear underneath the command made me nod. Okay, I'll go home. Relief flooded his expression. He cupped my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. Thank you, I'll call you tonight. I promise. Then he was gone, striding toward a different car, barking orders into his phone. Anthony appeared at my elbow seemingly from nowhere. Come on, Miss Chun, let's get you home. What's happening? Nothing you need to worry about, Anthony echoed Marco's words. Boss is handling it, but as we drove through the north end, I saw signs of whatever had summoned Marco. Cars moving with purpose. Men in suits appearing on corners. The neighborhood shifting from peaceful to watchful in the space of minutes. I'd chosen to jump in. Now I was learning that sometimes the water was deeper and more dangerous than you could see from the shore. I just hoped Marco and I both knew how to swim. I spent the rest of the afternoon pacing my tiny apartment, camera in hand, trying to distract myself by editing the photos from Juliana's. But my mind kept drifting to Marco's expression when he left, that mixture of fear and determination that suggested whatever he was dealing with was serious. Anthony had stationed himself outside my building. When I'd looked out the window an hour ago, he was still there, leaning against the Mercedes like a well-dressed sentinel. The sight should have comforted me. Instead, it underscored how much my life had changed in just a few days. My phone buzzed. Marco, are you home? Yes. Anthony's outside. What's going on? A pause. Someone tried to send me a message. They failed. But I need to make sure you're protected until I've handled the situation completely. What kind of message? The kind that involves violence and territory. His voice was tight with controlled anger. The kind that reminds me why I usually keep my distance from people I care about. Marco, I'm fine. Everyone's fine. But Sarah, I need you to understand something. He took a breath. There are people in my world who will try to use you to hurt me. Now that we're... They'll see you as a weakness. I'm not weak, no, but I am. Where you're concerned, I'm weak. The admission sounded like it cost him. My Uncle Vincent knows about you, knows I've been looking for you. Knows what you mean to me. Cold dread settled in my stomach. The uncle who helped your father? The same. He's been waiting 15 years for leverage against me. He thinks he's found it. A pause. He's not wrong. What does he want? Control of the family businesses. My father promised them to Vincent before he died. I took them instead, and Vincent has never forgiven that. He's been looking for a way to force me out or eliminate me entirely. Marco's voice dropped. He won't touch you. I've made that very clear. But he'll watch you, try to use you, wait for an opportunity. So what do? You let me protect you. You don't go anywhere without Anthony or one of my other men. You don't take unnecessary risks. He paused. And you tell me if you want to walk away from all of this. I'll understand, Sarah. I'll set you up somewhere safe, make sure you're provided for, and I'll disappear from your life. Your choice. Walk away. Go back to my struggling artist existence, safe and anonymous and alone. Or stay in Marco Vitelli's dangerous world, knowing that people might try to hurt me to hurt him, but also knowing that I'd never felt as alive, as seen, as valuable as I did when he looked at me. I'm not going anywhere, I said firmly. But Marco? I need you to promise me something. Anything. Don't shut me out. Don't treat me like I'm fragile. If there's danger, tell me. Let me make informed choices. I gripped the phone tighter. I survived foster care, poverty, and 15 years of people underestimating me. I can survive your world too. But only if you're honest with me. His exhale was shaky. You're remarkable, you know that? I'm stubborn. There's a difference. No piccola salvatrice. You're remarkable. A pause. I have to go. I'll call you later tonight. And Sarah, lock your door. Don't open it for anyone except Anthony. After he hung up, I did exactly that. Checked the locks, closed the curtains, tried to settle my racing heart. I pulled out my laptop and did what I always did when I needed to understand something. I researched. Vincent Vitali was harder to find information on the Marco, but there were traces. Court documents from old RICO investigations that had gone nowhere. Mentions and articles about the North End's changing power structures. A few society photos from charity events, showing a distinguished-looking man in his 60s with cold eyes and a politician's smile. He'd been Giovanni Vitali's brother-in-law, married to Marco's aunt. After Giovanni's death, Vincent had expected to take over the family businesses. Instead, 15-year-old Marco had stepped up, backed by Nonna Maria and the old guard who remembered Giovanni's cruelty and wanted something different. By all accounts, Marco had been brilliant. He'd legitimized most of the family businesses, created distance from the criminal elements while maintaining just enough presence to keep rivals at bay. He'd turned the Vitali name from something feared into something respected. But Vincent had never forgiven being passed over, and now he knew about me. I was staring at a photo of Vincent at some fundraiser when my phone rang. A no number, but I answered anyway. Sarah Chen? The voice was smooth, cultured, with just a hint of an Italian accent. My name is Vincent Vitali. I believe my nephew has mentioned me. My blood ran cold. How did you get this number? I have resources, my dear. Just as Marco does. A pause. I'm calling to offer you some friendly advice. Woman to woman, so to speak. I'm listening. I kept my voice steady despite my pounding heart. Marco is a complicated man. Brilliant, yes. Strong, certainly. But he carries the weight of our family's sins. And that weight will eventually crush anyone standing too close. Vincent's voice was almost kind. He cares about you. That's obvious. And that caring will make you a target for everyone who wants to hurt him. Do you really want that life, Miss Chen? What I want is none of your business? Perhaps not. But what my nephew wants, that is very much my business. He wants peace, redemption, a way out of the life his father forced him into. A calculated pause. He also wants you. And those two desires are incompatible. Let me guess, you're offering to make one of those problems go away. Vincent laughed, low and amused. I like you, Miss Chen. You're quick. Yes, I'm offering to make this easier for everyone. Walk away from Marco, I'll compensate you generously. You'll have enough money to fund your art career for years. All you have to do is disappear again. And if I don't, then you become part of a war you don't understand, fighting for a man who will ultimately choose his family obligations over you. His voice hardened. Marco is the head of this family. That comes with responsibilities he can't shirk, no matter how much he might want to. He'll try to protect you, but eventually he'll have to choose. And when he does, you'll be the one left broken. You don't know Marco as well as you think you do. I've known him his entire life. I watched his father try to drown him. I watched him claw his way out of that river and decide to become harder, colder, more ruthless than Giovanni ever was. Vincent's voice dropped. Marco Vitali is my brother-in-law's son through and through. He just hides it better. But that darkness is there, Miss Chen. One day you'll see it and you'll realize you're in love with a monster. I think this conversation is over. Think about my offer. You have 3 days. He paused. And Miss Chen? Don't tell Marco about this call. He'll feel obligated to escalate tensions with me to prove he can protect you. People will get hurt. Perhaps people you care about. Is your pride worth that? He hung up before I could respond. I sat there, phone clutched in my shaking hand, Vincent's words echoing in my mind. He was trying to manipulate me, that was obvious. But there was truth mixed in with the manipulation. Being with Marco would make me a target, would pull me into conflicts I didn't understand, would force him to make impossible choices between his obligations and his feelings. Was I really prepared for that? My phone rang again. This time it was Marco. I'm coming over, he said without preamble. I need to see you. Need to know you're okay. Marco, it's late. I don't care. He trailed off. Please, Sarah, I need to see you. There was something raw in his voice, something that spoke to more than just worry about Vincent's threats. Okay, come over. 10 minutes. Don't open the door until I call to confirm it's me. He arrived in 8 minutes. I watched from the window as he emerged from a different car, his movements quick and tense. Anthony and 2 other men fanned out, checking the street before Marco strode toward my building. My phone rang. It's me. Coming up. I opened the door to find him looking like he'd been through hell. His shirt was untucked, blood spattered on his collar, not his, I hoped. His knuckles were split and bruised. But it was his eyes that caught me, dark and haunted and desperate. What happened? I pulled him inside, locked the door behind him. Handled the Vincent situation. For now. His voice was flat and motionless. He won't try anything direct. I've made that very clear. Marco, you're bleeding. It's not mine. He looked down at his shirt like he'd forgotten it was there. I should go. I just needed to see that you were safe. Needed to. He ran a hand through his hair. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have come here like this. He turned toward the door, and something in his posture, the way his shoulders curved inward, the defeat in his voice broke my heart. Don't go. I caught his arm. Please, whatever happened tonight, you don't have to deal with it alone. You don't want to hear about it. Trust me. Try me? He laughed, bitter and broken. I hurt people tonight, Sarah, people who threaten what's mine. I did it without hesitation, without remorse. I became exactly what my father was, a man who solves problems with violence. His eyes met mine. That's who I am. That's what Vincent meant when he said I'm Giovanni's son through and through. I'm a monster in expensive clothes. No, you're not. You didn't see what I did tonight. I don't need to. I moved closer, close enough to feel the tension radiating from his body. I see you, Marco, not the violence you commit to protect people. Not the darkness you inherited. You, the man who builds restaurants to honor his mother. Who makes sure Nona Maria has everything she needs. Who spent 15 years looking for a stranger who saved his life. Those things don't erase what I am. They don't have to. They just have to exist alongside it. I touched his chest, felt his heart racing. You're not your father. You're not one thing or another. You're both the boy who almost drowned and the man who makes sure no one else drowns. You're both the violence and the protection, and that's okay. How can you say that? His voice cracked. How can you look at me and not be terrified? Because I've been afraid my whole life, of being unwanted, of being disposable. Of never mattering to anyone. I held his gaze. You make me feel like I matter. Like I'm worth protecting, worth finding, worth 15 years of searching. That means more than any violence you commit in some world I don't fully understand. His control finally shattered. He pulled me against him, buried his face in my hair, and just held on. I felt him trembling, felt the careful walls he built crumbling under the weight of whatever he'd done tonight. I killed a man once, he whispered against my hair. 5 years ago. He hurt someone under my protection. Hurt them badly, and I didn't hesitate. I just ended him, and I didn't feel guilty then. I don't feel guilty now. Okay. Okay? He pulled back to look at me. That's all you have to say? What do you want me to say? That I'm horrified? That I'm going to run away? I cupped his face, forced him to meet my eyes. I'm not going to pretend I understand your world. I'm not going to tell you violence is okay. But I'm also not going to judge you for doing what you had to do to protect people. You're not asking me to be your confessor, Marco. You're asking me to accept all of you, even the parts you hate about yourself. And can you? Accept me? I thought about Vincent's call, about the warnings, about how easy it would be to walk away. Then I thought about the tattoo on Marco's wrist, about the way he looked at me, about 15 years of waiting for a connection that felt like this. Yes, I said simply. I can accept you. His kiss was desperate and tender all at once, tasting like gratitude and relief and something deeper that neither of us was ready to name. His hands cradled my face like I was precious, breakable, while his mouth claimed mine like he was drowning and I was air. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. Vincent called you tonight, didn't he? His voice was quiet, certain. He offered you money to disappear. I stiffened. How did you know? Because it's exactly what I would do in his position. Find the weakness, exploit it, remove the threat. His jaw tightened. What did you tell him? I told him to go to hell. I pulled back slightly. He said I had 3 days to decide. Threatened that people would get hurt if I stayed. He's not wrong. Marco's expression was grim. People probably will get hurt. This thing between us, it's already causing problems. Forcing my hand in ways that will have consequences. Are you asking me to leave? No, God, no. He pulled me close again. I'm being selfish. I should tell you to take Vincent's money and run. Should protect you by pushing you away. But I can't. I've waited too long to find you. I'm not giving you up unless you choose to go. I'm not going anywhere. I said it firmly, certainly even as part of me wondered if I was making a terrible mistake. But Marco? No more secrets. If Vincent makes another move, I need to know. If there's danger, I need to be prepared. Deal? He kissed my forehead. And Sarah? If anything ever happens to me, if Vincent or anyone else manages to take me out, Anthony has instructions. You'll be protected, provided for. Set up somewhere far from all of this. Nothing's going to happen to you. You don't know that. Yes, I do. I met his eyes. Because I didn't save you twice just to lose you now. You're stuck with me, Marco Vitelli. Get used to it. His smile was brilliant and broken and beautiful. I think I can manage that. He stayed for another hour, helping me edit photos from the restaurant, asking questions about my process. Slowly relaxing back into the man I'd had lunch with instead of the violent enforcer he'd been tonight. When he finally left after kissing me goodbye so thoroughly my knees went weak, I locked the door and leaned against it. Vincent's warning echoed in my mind. One day you'll realize you're in love with a monster. Maybe I would. Maybe Marco had darkness in him that would eventually scare me away. But tonight I'd seen past the monster to the man underneath. And that man was worth whatever complications came with him. I just hoped I was strong enough to survive them. The next 2 weeks fell into a rhythm. I photographed Juliana's transformation from construction site to nearly finished restaurant. Marco appeared most days, sometimes for hours, sometimes just long enough to check on progress and steal a few moments alone with me. Anthony became my constant shadow, driving me to shoots, waiting patiently while I worked, somehow always knowing when I needed space and when I needed company. The photos I was capturing were some of my best work. The story of Juliana's wasn't just about a restaurant, it was about legacy, about family, about turning grief into something beautiful. I documented every stage. The installation of his mother's original oven, lovingly restored. The hand-painted tile work done by an artist who'd known Marco's grandmother. The family photos being hung on the walls, generations of Vitellis smiling from black and white frames. And through it all, I photographed Marco. Not formally, he'd have hated that. But in stolen moments when he didn't realize I was watching. His hands tracing his mother's handwriting in a recipe book. His smile when Nonna Maria visited and approved of the wine selection. His grief when he stood in the empty dining room and whispered something in Italian that I didn't understand but felt in my bones. We hadn't kissed again since that night in my apartment, hadn't crossed any more lines. But the tension between us grew daily, fed by lingering looks and careful distances and touches that lasted just a moment too long. You're torturing me, you know that? He said it one afternoon as we stood in Juliana's kitchen, watching workers install the final equipment. Being this close and not being able to touch you properly. Who says you can't? I do. His voice was rough, because if I start, I won't stop. And you deserve better than me losing control in the middle of my mother's restaurant. Maybe I want you to lose control. His eyes darkened. Don't say things like that unless you mean them. I mean them? I stepped closer, close enough to smell his cologne. I've been thinking about that kiss for 2 weeks. Wondering when you're going to do it again. Sarah, my name was a warning and a plea. Marco. I matched his tone. I know you're trying to be noble. Trying to give me space to decide if this is what I want. But I've decided. I want you, I want this. Whatever complicated, dangerous this is. He groaned, low and tortured. You're killing me. Good. Now kiss me before I... His mouth was on mine before I could finish the sentence, hot and demanding and perfect. His hands gripped my waist, pulling me flush against him as he backed me against the stainless steel counter. The kiss was nothing like the tender exploration from 2 weeks ago. This was need and frustration and want that had been building since that day in the coffee shop. Maybe since that night by the river 15 years ago. I threaded my fingers through his hair, opened my mouth to his tongue, let myself drown in the sensation of Marco Vitelli finally touching me the way I'd been craving. A throat cleared loudly. We broke apart to find Tommaso standing in the doorway, looking supremely amused. "Boss?" he said in heavily accented English. "The inspector is here." "He wants to see you," Marco swore in Italian. "Tell him I'll be right there." He looked at me, pupils still dilated with desire. "We'll continue this conversation later. Promise?" "Piccola salvatrice, that's a guarantee." He kissed me once more, quick and hard, before following Tommaso out. I stood there, lips swollen and heart racing, trying to remember how to breathe normally. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "I see my nephew couldn't keep his hands off you. Pity. Things are about to get very complicated for you both." Volt ice flooded my veins. I looked around the kitchen, suddenly aware of how exposed I was. How many windows? How many ways someone could be watching? Another text arrived. A photo this time. Me and Marco kissing against the counter, taken from outside through the window. "3 days are up, Miss Chen. Time to make your choice. His world or your safety. You can't have both." I showed the text to Marco as soon as he returned from dealing with the inspector. Watched his expression go from confused to furious to terrifyingly controlled. "Anthony." His voice carried through the restaurant. "I need to sleep. Now. Every camera, every bug, every angle." Within minutes, Anthony and his team were checking every inch of Juliana's. They found 3 cameras hidden in light fixtures, air vents, corners where you'd never think to look. "Professional installation," Anthony reported. "Recent, someone knew exactly what they were doing." Marco held one of the tiny cameras in his palm, his jaw so tight I thought it might crack. "Vincent, most likely. How long has he been watching?" "Based on the equipment, I guess about a week, maybe more." Anthony's expression was grim. "Boss, we need to—" "I know what we need to do." Marco cut him off, then seemed to remember I was there. His face softened slightly. "Sarah, I'm taking you somewhere safe. Somewhere Vincent can't touch you." "I'm not running away." "You're not running. You're being smart." He gripped my shoulders gently. "Please, I need to handle this, and I can't do that if I'm worried about your safety every second. What are you going to do?" "What I should have done 15 years ago." His voice was cold, final. "I'm going to end Vincent's threat permanently." Fear and something else, something that felt uncomfortably like excitement twisted in my gut. "Marco, don't ask me not to do this. Don't ask me to be better than I am." His hands tightened slightly. "He threatened you. Put cameras in my mother's restaurant to spy on me. Tried to use you as leverage. That ends tonight. I'm not asking you to be better. I'm asking you to be careful." I touched his face. "Come back to me, okay? Whatever you have to do, just come back." His expression softened. "Always, I didn't spend 15 years finding you just to lose you now." He kissed me, tender despite the violence I could feel coiling in his muscles. "Anthony will take you to a safe house. Don't leave. Don't answer the door. Don't trust anyone except the men I send." "How long?" "Tonight. Maybe tomorrow." He stepped back, already transforming into someone harder, someone I recognized from that night he'd come to my apartment covered in blood. "I'll call when it's done." He was gone before I could respond, starting out of Juliana's with Anthony scrambling to keep up. The other men closed ranks around me, polite but implacable, guiding me to a car I didn't recognize. The safe house is actually a beautiful condo in the Seaport district, all floor-to-ceiling windows and modern furniture. 2 of Marco's men stationed themselves outside, while a third, a surprisingly young guy named Luca, stayed inside, trying to be unobtrusive as he checked every room, every lock, every possible entry point. "Mr. Vitelli takes your security very seriously," Luca said, almost apologetically. "He'll have my head if anything happens to you. I'm sure you're very competent." "I am." "But he trailed off, looking uncomfortable. You're important to him. More important than anyone I've seen in the 5 years I've worked for him. That makes protecting you the most important job I'll ever have." The weight of that settled over me. I wasn't just Sarah Chen anymore, struggling photographer. I was Marco Vitelli's weakness, his vulnerability, the thing his enemies would use to destroy him. I thought about Vincent's offer, money, safety, freedom from this complicated, dangerous world. Then I thought about Marco's kiss, about the way he looked at me like I was his salvation. About 15 years of waiting for a connection that felt inevitable. I pulled out my camera and started uploading the photos from Juliana's to my laptop. If I was going to be stuck here, I might as well work. Hours passed. I edited photos, trying not to think about what Marco was doing. Trying not to imagine the violence he was capable of, the choices he was making to protect me. My phone rang at 2 a.m. Marco's voice when he answered was tired but alive. It's done. Vincent won't be a problem anymore. What does that mean? It means I had a very clear conversation with him about the consequences of threatening you. About what will happen if he ever comes near you again. A pause. He understood. Did you? I couldn't finish the question. No, I wanted to, but I didn't. His voice dropped. You make me want to be better than I am, Sarah, even when it would be easier to be the monster. Relief flooded through me. When can I see you? Tomorrow. Tomorrow. I need to tie up some loose ends, make sure Vincent's backers understand the new status quo. But tomorrow night we're having dinner, just us. No interruptions, no business, no Vincent. He paused. And Sarah? Where's something nice? I'm taking you somewhere special. Where? You'll see. Trust me? Yes, I trust you. His exhale was shaky. Thank you. For everything, for not running when you had every reason to. For accepting who I am, he trailed off. Thank you. After he hung up, I sat in the expensive safe house and tried to process everything that had happened. In 2 weeks, my entire life had transformed. I'd gone from barely making rent to having a 6-figure contract. From being alone to being protected by armed guards. From struggling artist to the woman Marco Vitelli couldn't stop looking at. Vincent's words echoed, "You'll realize you're in love with a monster." Maybe I would. Maybe I already had. But maybe loving a monster wasn't about excusing the darkness. Maybe it was about understanding that people were complicated. That Marco could be both the violence he committed and the tenderness he showed me. That he could make hard choices to protect people and still honor his mother's memory. That he could be exactly what his world needed him to be and still be the boy I pulled from a river 15 years ago. I fell asleep on the safe house couch, my camera in my lap, dreaming of dark eyes and dangerous smiles and the feeling of drowning in the best possible way. Marco picked me up himself the next evening, driving a sleek black Maserati instead of the usual Mercedes. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored navy suit, his hair styled back, looking every inch the powerful man he was. But when he saw me in the simple black dress I'd borrowed from the safe house's surprisingly well-stocked closet, his eyes went soft. "Bella," he breathed. "So beautiful. You don't look so bad yourself." His smile was warm as he opened the car door for me. "Tonight is about us. No business, no Vincent. No talk about my world or your safety, just us. I'd like that." He drove us to a restaurant I didn't recognize, not one of his, but a small Italian place hidden in the North End's winding streets. The owner greeted Marco like family, led us to a private room in the back where candles flickered and soft music played. "I wanted to give you something normal," Marco said as we sat down. "A regular date. The kind where I'm just a man taking out a beautiful woman, not a mob boss protecting his weakness. I'm not your weakness." "Yes, you are." He said it without hesitation. "You're my greatest vulnerability and my greatest strength. Vincent was right about that. Much loving you makes me dangerous to my enemies because now I have something worth destroying the world to protect. Loving me?" My heart stuttered. He reached across the table, laced our fingers together. I wasn't going to say it yet. Was going to wait until you were sure about all of this. But after last night, after nearly losing you to Vincent's manipulations. He paused. "Yes, Sarah, I love you. I've loved the idea of you for 15 years. And now that I know the real you, I love you more than I thought possible." Tears stung my eyes. "Marco, you don't have to say it back. I'm not asking you to. I'm just telling you the truth." His thumb brushed across my knuckles. "Whatever you decide about us, about this life, I need you to know that you're loved. Completely, unconditionally, for exactly who you are." I thought about all the reasons I should protect my heart. All the warnings and red flags and logical arguments against falling for Marco Vitelli. Then I thought about how he made me feel seen, valued, important. About how his darkness didn't scare me because I understood it came from survival, not cruelty. About how saving him 15 years ago had somehow saved me too. giving my life meaning I've been searching for ever since. I love you too, I whispered. I didn't mean to. I tried not to. But I do. His smile was incandescent. Say it again. I love you, Marco Vitelli. Even though you're complicated and dangerous and your world terrifies me. I love you. He stood, pulled me up, kissed me like I was oxygen, and he'd been holding his breath for 15 years. The kiss was tender and desperate and full of promises neither of us was quite ready to make, but both of us were already keeping. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. Marry me, I laughed, giddy and overwhelmed. We've known each other for 3 weeks. We've known each other for 15 years. We just didn't know it. His hands cupped my face. I'm not asking you to say yes tonight. I'm not even asking you to say yes this year. I'm just asking you to know that someday, when you're ready, I'm going to ask you properly. With a ring and a proposal and all the romance you deserve. And I'm hoping you'll say yes. You're insane. About you? Absolutely. He kissed me again, softer. But I can wait. I'm good at waiting. I've had 15 years of practice. We sat back down and over the best Italian food I'd ever tasted, Marco told me stories about his childhood. About Nonna Maria teaching him to make pasta. About his mother's laugh and her terrible singing voice. About the day he decided to take over his father's organization and turn it into something his mother would have been proud of. I told him about foster care. About the families who kept me for the checks and the ones who genuinely tried. About discovering photography and finding a way to see beauty in a world that had shown me mostly ugliness. About the night by the river and how I'd almost not jumped in. How I'd almost let fear win. I'm glad you didn't, he said quietly. I'm glad you chose to jump in. Both times. Me too. We talked for hours learning each other, filling in the 15 years of gaps. When Marco finally drove me back to the safe house, I felt like I'd known him my whole life. Maybe in some ways I had. Can I come up? He asked at the door. Luca's inside. I'll send him away. His eyes held mine. I want to be with you tonight, Sarah. Not just physically, though I want that too. I want to fall asleep next to you, wake up with you. Have one night where we're just two people who love each other, not complications and danger. Okay, yes. He called Luca, who left with remarkable speed. Then Marco and I were alone in the safe house. The city glittering through the floor-to-ceiling windows, everything feeling suspended and perfect. I've never done this before, I admitted. Been in love. Let someone this close. Neither have I, not really. He pulled me against him. We'll figure it out together. We kissed our way to the bedroom, taking our time, learning each other's bodies the way we'd spent dinner learning each other's histories. Marco was gentle and reverent, touching me like I was precious, whispering Italian endearments against my skin that I didn't understand but felt in my soul. Afterward, tangled in expensive sheets with Marco's heartbeats steady under my ear, I felt something I'd never experienced before. Complete safety. Not just physical safety, though his arms around me certainly provided that, but emotional safety. The knowledge that this man would protect me, cherish me, choose me, no matter what came. I'm going to mess this up, I whispered into the darkness. I'm going to get scared and push you away or make you choose between me and your responsibilities? Probably. His hand stroked my hair. And I'm going to be overprotective and secretive and make decisions without consulting you because I'm used to being in control. So we're a disaster waiting to happen? Or we're two people who've survived enough disasters to know how to weather them together. He tilted my face up to kiss me. I'm betting on the second option. Me too. We fell asleep like that. Wrapped around each other, the scar on my wrist pressed against the tattoo on his. Two children who'd met in darkness, grown into adults in different kinds of darkness, finally finding light in each other. I didn't know what the future held. Didn't know if we'd survive the complications of Marco's world or if Vincent would make another play or if I'd eventually run from the violence and danger. But I knew this. Marco Vitelli loved me and I loved him. And sometimes love was enough to build something beautiful from broken pieces. At least I hoped it was. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through the windows and Marco already awake, watching me with an expression so tender it made my chest ache. How long have you been staring at me? I asked, voice rough with sleep. Not long enough. He brushed hair from my face. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and you'll be gone. That this is all a dream. I'm very real. I pressed my palm against his chest. See? Solid, present, not going anywhere. Good. He pulled me closer. Because I have plans for us today. What kind of plans? The kind where I show you my world. The real world, not the dangerous parts. I want you to understand why I do what I do. Why I stay in this life instead of running away from it. An hour later, dressed in borrowed clothes from the safe house's mysterious closet, I followed Marco through the north end. But this time, we weren't going to restaurants or construction sites. We were visiting people. First stop was a small bakery where an elderly woman named Rosa greeted Marco with tears in her eyes. Marco, you came. She gripped his hands. I wasn't sure you'd have time. I'll always have time for you, Rosa. You know that. He turned to me. Sarah, this is Rosa Cardinali. Her husband worked for my father. When he died and left her with nothing, my father refused to help. Sad he was weak for dying. Rosa nodded, still holding Marco's hands. Giovanni was a hard man. A cruel man. But this one, she squeezed Marco's fingers. This one came to me the day after he took over. Said he wouldn't let my husband's sacrifice be for nothing. Set me up with this bakery. Made sure I had everything I needed. You earned it, Marco said gently. Your husband gave his life protecting my father. The least I could do was make sure his widow was cared for. We left with bags of fresh bread and Rosa's gratitude ringing in our ears. The pattern repeated throughout the morning. A young mother whose abusive ex-husband had mysteriously left town after Marco had a conversation with him. An older man whose medical bills Marco paid anonymously. A teenager heading to college on a scholarship from a foundation Marco funded. This is what you do? I asked as we walked. Take care of people? This is what the family is supposed to do. What it was always supposed to do. His voice was firm. My father turned us into criminals and thugs. I'm trying to turn us back into what we were meant to be. Protectors, community, family. But you still have the other side. The violence. The threats. Because some people only understand strength. Some threats can't be reasoned with. He stopped walking, turned to face me. I wish I could be purely good, Sarah. I wish I could protect people without also being dangerous. But that's not the world I live in. The only way to keep Rosa safe is to make sure everyone knows what happens if they threaten her. The only way to help that young mother is to be the kind of man her ex-husband is terrified of. I understand. And I did. You're the monster that keeps other monsters away. Exactly. He touched my face. Does that make you love me less? No, it makes me understand you more. I leaned into his touch. You're trying to build something better than what you inherited. That matters. Our last stop was a small community center. Inside, a dozen kids aged 8 to 16 were working on art projects. Marco was immediately swarmed. Children calling his name, showing him paintings and sculptures and photographs. A young girl, maybe 13, approached me shyly. Are you Mr. Vitelli's girlfriend? I glanced at Marco, who was helping a young boy with a clay sculpture. Yes, I suppose I am. He talks about you. Says you're an amazing photographer. She held out a disposable camera. Could you look at my pictures? Tell me if they're any good? For the next hour, I worked with the kids, looking at their art, offering gentle guidance. Watching Marco interact with them with patience and kindness that transformed him completely. This was the Marco his enemies never saw, the man who funded art programs for underprivileged kids, who remembered every child's name, who somehow made each one feel special and seen. The center was my mother's dream too, Marco explained as we left. She believed art could save lives. That creativity could give kids an escape from poverty and violence. His voice roughened. She died before she could make it happen. So I did it for her. She'd be proud of you. I laced my fingers through his. I'm proud of you. His eyes glistened. That means everything to me. You know that, right? Your opinion, your approval, it matters more than anything else in my world. Marco, my phone rang, unknown number again. Every instinct screamed not to answer, but Marco had already seen it. Answer it, speaker? His voice went hard. If it's Vincent, I want to hear. It wasn't Vincent. It was a woman's voice, cultured and cold. Miss Chen, my name is Isabella Vitelli. I'm Marco's aunt, Vincent's wife. Marco's expression went murderous. Isabella, what do you want? To meet the woman who's captured my nephew's heart. Her voice was pleasant, but I heard steel underneath. Vincent told me about her, about how protective you've become. I'd like to see for myself if she's worth all this trouble. That's not happening. It is. Because I have information she needs to hear. Information about your past, about your plans for her future, about the promises you've made that you can't possibly keep. A pause. Meet me tomorrow, noon, the cafe on Hanover Street. Come alone, Miss Chen. Marco can wait outside. If you don't show, I'll assume you're not as brave as my nephew believes. And I'll share what I know publicly instead. She hung up before either of us could respond. Marco was already pulling out his own phone, issuing rapid orders in Italian. I'm shutting this down. Isabella doesn't get to threaten you. What if she really has information I need to hear? She's manipulating you, trying to drive a wedge between us. Then let her try. I caught his hand. I'm not afraid of your past, Marco. And I'm not afraid of hearing truths that might be uncomfortable. If Isabella wants to tell me something, I'll listen. Then I'll decide for myself what to believe. Sarah, you said you wanted me to make informed choices. This is me making one. I held his gaze. I'll meet her. You can have Anthony outside the cafe if it makes you feel better. But I'm hearing what she has to say. His jaw worked. You're terrifyingly brave, you know that? Or terrifyingly stupid. No, brave. He pulled me against him. Just promise me something. Whatever she tells you, whatever lies or truths she shares, talk to me about it before you make any decisions. Give me a chance to explain. I promise. That night, back at the safe house with Marco refusing to leave my side, I lay awake thinking about the next day, about what Isabella might reveal. About how Marco's world kept trying to pull us apart even as we fought to stay together. Stop thinking so loud, Marco murmured against my hair. I can hear you worrying from here. What if she tells me something that changes everything? Then we deal with it, together. He turned me to face him. Sarah, I've done things I'm not proud of, made choices that haunt me. There's probably a lot Isabella can tell you that will paint me in an ugly light. But none of it changes how I feel about you. None of it changes the fact that you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. Promise me something? Anything. Promise me you'll never lie to me. Not to protect me, not to make things easier, not for any reason. I can handle hard truths. I can't handle deception. His expression went solemn. I promise, no lies. No matter how ugly the truth is. Good. I kissed him. Now stop worrying about tomorrow and go to sleep. We'll deal with Isabella when the time comes. But neither of us slept much that night. The cafe on Hanover Street was busy with the lunch crowd when I arrived. Anthony was parked across the street, watching with hawk-like attention. Marco was somewhere nearby. He'd refused to tell me where, just assured me he'd be close if I needed him. Isabella Vitelli was impossible to miss. She sat at a corner table, elegant in a cream-colored suit, her dark hair perfectly styled, her makeup flawless. She was probably in her early 50s, but could have passed for 40, with the kind of ageless beauty that money could buy and maintain. Miss Chen. She stood to greet me, air-kissing both cheeks in the European style. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. I'm curious what you have to say. Direct. I like that. She gestured to the seat across from her. Please sit. I've ordered us coffee and pastries. I hope that's acceptable. We sat in silence while the server delivered our order. Isabella studied me with sharp, assessing eyes. You're not what I expected, she said finally. Vincent described you as some naive girl Marco was infatuated with. But I see something different. Strength, resilience, intelligence. Was that a compliment? An observation. She sipped her coffee. My nephew has never been in love before. He's had relationships, of course, but never anything that touched him the way you clearly have. That makes you either very special or very dangerous. Which do you think I am? Both. Her smile was slight. You're special because you see past his power to the man underneath. You're dangerous because that same vision makes him vulnerable in ways he's never been before. You sound like Vincent. Vincent is an idiot. Her voice was sharp. He thinks power comes from control and fear. He doesn't understand that real power comes from loyalty and love. He's been trying to take Marco down for 15 years, and he's failed every time because he doesn't inspire the kind of devotion Marco does. Then why are you here? If you don't support Vincent's plans? Isabella's expression softened slightly. Because I love my nephew. Marco is the closest thing I have to a son. And I'm terrified you're going to destroy him. I would never, not intentionally. But Sarah, do you understand what you're asking him to be? She leaned forward. Marco has spent his entire adult life trying to be better than his father. Trying to turn our family into something honorable while still maintaining enough power to protect everyone who depends on us. It's an impossible balance. And now you're asking him to add one more impossibility, being the kind of man who deserves someone like you. I'm not asking him to be anything except himself. Aren't you? Every time he sees you, he becomes someone softer, more vulnerable, more willing to take risks he shouldn't take. Her voice dropped. Vincent's threat last week? Marco handled it by threatening to burn down everything Vincent has built. He made enemies of people we need as allies. He destabilized relationships that have taken decades to build. All because Vincent dared to threaten you. My stomach twisted. I didn't ask him to do that. You didn't have to. That's my point. Isabella's eyes were kind but firm. Marco will destroy himself trying to be worthy of you. He'll make choices that endanger our family because protecting you takes priority over protecting the empire. And eventually, that will get him killed. So, what are you asking me to do? Leave him? I'm asking you to understand the position you're putting him in. To make conscious choices about what you're willing to accept and what you're not. She pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. This is information about Marco's activities over the past 15 years. Business deals, family relationships, decisions he's made. I'm not showing you this to scare you away. I'm showing you this so you can make an informed choice about whether you can really live with who he is. I opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were documents, photos, news clippings. Evidence of Marco's involvement in activities that ranged from legally questionable to definitely illegal. Protection rackets, money laundering. Connections to organized crime families across the Northeast. But there were also other documents. Charities funded. Community programs established. People helped. A complex picture of a man trying to do good through methods that weren't always clean. This is who my nephew is, Isabella said quietly. Not a monster, not a saint. Just a man trying to navigate an impossible world with some small measure of honor. The question is, can you love him knowing all of this? Can you stand beside him when people call him a criminal? Can you accept that some of the money he spends on you comes from sources you'd rather not think about? I closed the folder, my mind spinning. Why are you showing me this? Because I don't want you to wake up one day and realize you're in love with someone you can't actually accept. That kind of revelation destroys people, Sarah. It will destroy Marco if you leave him. And it will destroy you if you stay and resent him for being exactly who he's always been. Isabella's voice was gentle now. I'm giving you a choice. Walk away now before you're in too deep. Or stay with full knowledge of what that means and never throw any of this in his face when things get hard. That's not a fair choice. Life rarely is. She stood, gathering her purse. I've said what I came to say. The rest is up to you. But Sarah? Whatever you decide, decide quickly. Every day you stay is another day Marco falls deeper in love with you. Another day it will hurt more if you leave. She was gone before I could respond, leaving me alone with a folder full of uncomfortable truths and a decision that felt impossible. I sat there for a long time, coffee going cold, pastries untouched, trying to process everything Isabella had shown me. She was right, some of what Marco did was illegal. Some of it was morally questionable. Some of it directly contradicted values I'd built my life around, but she was also right that I'd known this. Maybe not the specific details, but the general truth. Marco had never hidden what he was. He'd warned me repeatedly that his world was complicated and dangerous. The question wasn't whether I could accept his past. The question was whether I could accept his future. My phone buzzed. Marco, are you okay? Anthony said Isabella left. I'm okay. Can you meet me? The safe house? I'm already on my way. 20 minutes later, I was pacing the safe house living room, the folder on the coffee table, trying to figure out what to say. Marco let himself in with a key I hadn't known he had, his expression tight with worry. What did she tell you? I gestured to the folder. Everything. Or enough of everything to paint a very complete picture. He picked it up, flipped through it, his expression darkening. Isabella's always been thorough. He looked at me. This changes things for you? I don't know. Does it change things for you that I've seen all of this? No, I'm glad you have. He set the folder down. I was going to tell you eventually, show you all of this. Let you decide if you could live with it. Isabella just moved up the timeline. Can I ask you something? Anything. The protection rackets. The money laundering, is it still happening? He didn't hesitate. Some of it, yes. I've legitimized most of our businesses, but there are elements that can't be removed without destabilizing everything. Families who depend on income from activities that aren't strictly legal, traditions that go back generations. I've cleaned up what I can, but I can't make it all disappear without destroying people's livelihoods. So you're choosing to participate in criminal activity to protect people? Yes, his voice was steady. I'm making the choice to do some harm to prevent greater harm. It's not noble. It's not righteous. It's just pragmatic. I thought about that. About moral absolutes versus messy reality. About the fact that Marco's protection rackets mostly consisted of making sure businesses in the North End paid a fee that funded community programs and kept violent crime out of the neighborhood. Isabella said you've made enemies because of me. Destabilized relationships. She's not wrong. He moved closer. Vincent had backing from other families. When I threatened him, I threatened them too. It's caused complications. Dangerous complications? Potentially? But manageable. He cupped my face. Sarah, I need you to understand something. I would burn down my entire empire before I'd let anyone hurt you. If that makes me a bad leader or a dangerous man, so be it. You are my priority. You will always be my priority. That's what scares me. I covered his hands with mine. What if choosing me over your responsibilities gets you killed? What if I'm the weakness that destroys everything you've built? Then I'll die happy and my empire will rebuild. His voice was fierce. I survived being drowned by my father. I survived 15 years in this world. I'll survive whatever comes next, but I won't survive losing you. Not now that I've found you again. Tears slipped down my cheeks. I don't want to be the thing that gets you killed. You won't be. You'll be the thing that gives me a reason to survive. He wet my tears with his thumbs. I love you, Sarah-chan, not despite your fears and complications, but because of them. Because you challenge me to be better. Because you see all of this. He gestured to the folder. And you're still standing here, still trying to figure out if we can make this work. I do love you. The admission felt like jumping into a river, like running toward a car crash. I love you enough that it terrifies me. Enough that I want to make this work even though every logical part of my brain says I should run. So don't run. He pulled me against him. Jump in, like you did 15 years ago. Trust that we'll figure out how to swim together. I thought about Isabella's warning. About the impossible balance Marco was trying to maintain. About all the ways this could go wrong. Then I thought about the community center full of kids. About Rose's bakery. About Nona Maria's fierce love and Tomaso's respect. About the man who'd spent 15 years looking for the girl who saved him, who wore her scar on his skin, who looked at her like she was everything. Okay, I whispered against his chest. I'm jumping in, I'm all in. Whatever that means. His arms tightened around me. It means we face everything together. The good, the bad, the complicated. It means I'm going to make mistakes and you're going to have moments where you wonder if you made the right choice. But it also means you're mine and I'm yours and nothing, not Vincent, not Isabella, not the entire FBI is going to change that. Promise? I promise. He tilted my face up, kissed me with a tenderness that made my chest ache. You saved my life twice, piccola salvatrice. Now let me spend the rest of my life saving yours back. We stayed like that for a long time, wrapped around each other, letting the decision settle into our bones. I was choosing Marco, choosing his complicated world and dangerous life, an impossible balancing act. I was choosing love over logic, connection over safety, the messy reality of a man trying to be better over the fantasy of someone perfect. And somehow that felt like exactly the right choice. The weeks leading up to Juliana's opening were a blur of activity and intensity. I documented every step, the final inspections, the staff training, the delivery of custom furniture and dishes bearing Marco's mother's monogram. My photographs told the story of a dream being realized, a legacy being honored, a son's love made tangible. But they also told another story, one I was only beginning to understand I was capturing. In the margins of my restaurant photos were images of Marco's world. His men in quiet conversation. The respect and fear in people's eyes when he walked past. The careful choreography of power and protection that happened around him constantly. I was documenting the life I'd chosen to be part of. These are extraordinary, Marcus Delgado said when I showed him a selection for the gallery show Marco was still insisting on funding. The lawyer had become an unexpected friend, offering advice on contracts and life with equal wisdom. You're not just photographing a restaurant. You're photographing a community, a way of life. Is that okay? Photographing this? I gestured vaguely, meaning Marco's world. As long as you're not documenting anything illegal, yes? Marcus's expression was kind. And Sarah? You're capturing the good parts, the parts Marco wants to be remembered for. That's a gift. The night before Juliana's opening, Marco took me to the empty restaurant. It was perfect, every detail exactly as he'd envisioned. His mother's dream made real and exposed brick and candlelight and family photographs on the walls. I need to tell you something, he said as we stood in the dining room, about my plans. Our plans, if you'll have me. I'm listening. I'm stepping back from some of the family business. Not completely, I can't abandon my responsibilities. But I'm delegating more, legitimizing faster. Creating distance between myself and the activities you saw in Isabella's folder. He took my hands. I'm doing it because I want a future with you. A real future. Marriage, maybe children someday, a life that's more than just surviving. My heart stuttered. Marco, I'm not asking you to marry me tonight. Not officially. But I'm telling you my intentions. I'm telling you that every choice I make from now on will be made with you in mind. With us in mind. His eyes searched mine. Does that scare you? Yes, but in a good way. I squeezed his hands. I want that future too. The complicated, messy, sometimes scary future where we're together. Even knowing what you know? Even accepting what I am? Especially because I know. Especially because I accept you. I smiled. You're not perfect, Marco Vitelli. But you're mine. And I'm done pretending I can walk away from that. His kiss was soft and deep and full of promises we were both ready to keep. When we finally broke apart, he pulled a small box from his pocket. This was my mother's, he said, opening it to reveal a delicate gold bracelet. I want you to have it. Not as an engagement ring, we're not there yet, but as a promise. As a symbol that you're family now. The bracelet was beautiful, simple gold with a small charm, a tiny camera. You added this, I said, touching the charm. I did. Because you're not just joining my family. You're creating something new with me. A future that honors the past but isn't defined by it. He fastened the bracelet on my wrist, right next to the scar. Perfect. I looked down at the gold against my skin, at the scar that had brought us together, at the physical representation of choosing to stay. Thank you, I whispered. For finding me, for not giving up, for making me brave enough to jump in. Thank you for being someone worth finding. Worth 15 years of searching. Worth building a better life for. He pulled me close. Tomorrow we open Juliana's, we show the world what we've built together. And then, Sarah-chan, we start building the rest of our lives. Juliana's opening was everything Marco had hoped for. The restaurant was packed with family, friends, community members, and enough of Boston's elite to make it a social event. Nona Maria cried when she saw her daughter's dream realized. Tommaso and the construction crew came in their best suits, proud of what they'd built. And Vincent was there, surprisingly, with Isabella on his arm. He approached us during a quiet moment, his expression carefully neutral. It's beautiful, Marco. Your mother would be proud. Thank you. Marco's voice was equally neutral, but his arm tightened around my waist. Vincent turned to me. Miss Chen, I apologize for my behavior. For threatening you. For trying to manipulate you away from my nephew. His eyes met mine. Isabella helped me understand that fighting Marco's happiness was only hurting our family. I'm trying to do better. I appreciate that, I said carefully. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I'll respect Marco's choices from now on. Including his choice of partner, he extended his hand to Marco. Truce? For the family's sake? Marco studied his uncle for a long moment before accepting the handshake. Truce. But Vincent? If you ever threaten Sarah again, truce or not, I'll end you. Are we clear? Crystal, Vincent's smile was tight but genuine. Congratulations on the restaurant, on finding love, on building something good from our family's complicated legacy. After they left, I looked up at Marco. Did that really just happen? Isabella's influence. She can be very persuasive when she wants to be. He kissed my temple. It doesn't mean I trust Vincent, but it means we might have peace. For now, I'll take it. The rest of the evening was a celebration. I photographed everything, the joy on Nona Maria's face as she tasted her daughter's recipes, the pride in Marco's eyes as he gave a toast, the community coming together to honor a woman they loved, and a man who was trying to honor her memory. And at the end of the night, when everyone had left and it was just Marco and me in the empty restaurant, he pulled me onto the dance floor. There's no music, I pointed out. We don't need music. He wrapped his arms around me and we swayed in silence in the candlelight, in the space where his mother's dream lived. Thank you, he said quietly, for being here, for documenting this, for making this night more perfect than I could have imagined. Thank you for letting me in, for showing me your world, for trusting me with your mother's legacy. We danced in silence for a while longer and I thought about the journey that had brought us here. From a river 15 years ago to a restaurant opening today. From 2 children scarred by trauma to 2 adults choosing to build something beautiful together. I love you, I whispered. I love you too, Piccola Salvatrice. He rested his forehead against mine. More than I ever thought I could love anyone, even though I'm complicated and stubborn and sometimes make your life harder. Especially because of those things. His smile was soft. You challenge me. You make me better. You see all of me, the good and the bad, and you choose to stay. That's not complicated, Sarah. That's everything. Everything, I echoed. That's what you are to me, too. We stayed like that until the candles started to gutter, until the city outside grew quiet, until we were the only 2 people in the world. And when we finally left Juliana's, walking through the North End hand in hand, I felt something I'd never felt before. I felt like I was home. Not in a place, but in a person. In Marco Vitelli, with all his complications and contradictions. In the life we were building together, brick by brick, choice by choice, day by day. 15 years ago, I jumped into a river to save a drowning boy. Tonight, I was choosing to dive even deeper, trusting that the man that boy had become would help me swim. And somehow, I knew we'd both survive whatever waters came next. Together, my gallery show opened on a perfect spring evening. The walls were covered with photographs from Juliana's construction to completion, the story of a dream realized. But the centerpiece was a different series entirely. Scars and Survival, a love story in photographs, 15 images, carefully curated, telling the story of Marco and me. Not explicitly, I never violate his privacy that way, but a metaphor and symbol. Hands showing matching scars. A boy's face overlaid with a man's, but Charles River at dawn. A tattoo of a scar. 2 figures barely visible holding each other in darkness. The story of 2 people who survived being drowned and learned to swim together. It's beautiful, Nona Maria said, tears streaming down her face as she studied the photographs. You see him clearly, the boy and the man. The darkness and the light, everything. I love him, I said simply. All of him. I know. And he loves you the same way. She squeezed my hand. You're good for each other. You're building something strong. Marco arrived late, having been delayed by a business meeting. But when he walked into the gallery and saw the photographs, his expression made every hour of work worth it. Sarah. He moved through the exhibition slowly, studying each image. When he reached the centerpiece, a photograph of our hands, his tattoo and my scar intertwined, he stopped, just stood there, staring. I came to stand beside him. Do you hate it? It's not too much? It's perfect. His voice was rough with emotion. You told our story, the real story. The one about survival and scars and choosing each other despite everything. Is that okay? It's more than okay. He turned to me and I saw tears in his eyes. It's everything I didn't know I needed. Proof that someone sees me, really sees me. And loves me anyway. Always, I touched his face. I'll always see you. All of you. The gallery show was a success. Critics praised my raw emotional honesty and unflinching look at love in its most complicated form. Sales were strong enough that I could finally quit worrying about rent. But the real success was simpler. It was Marco, standing in front of photographs that exposed his vulnerability, looking proud instead of scared. It was Nona Maria, seeing her grandson honored and loved. It was the life we were building, complicated and messy and absolutely perfect. That night, back at Marco's penthouse I'd moved in 2 months ago. Though I still kept my studio for work, he pulled me onto the balcony overlooking the city. "I have something for you." He pulled out a small box, not the bracelet box. Something smaller. My heart stopped. "Marco, I know we said we'd wait. Take our time. Make sure this was real." He opened the box to reveal a stunning ring, simple, elegant, perfect. "But Sarah, I've already waited 15 years. I don't want to wait anymore. Marry me, build a life with me. Make me the luckiest man alive by choosing me every day for the rest of our lives." Tears streamed down my face. Yes, God, yes. He slipped the ring on my finger, then kissed me like I was oxygen, and he'd been holding his breath since that night by the river. When we finally broke apart, both of us crying and laughing, he rested his forehead against mine. "Thank you for jumping in Piccola Salvatrice. Both times. Thank you for being worth saving." I kissed him again, and Marco, I'd jump in again. Every single time. For you, I'd always jump in. We stood there on the balcony holding each other, the city glittering around us like diamonds. Two people scarred by their past, building a future together. Two survivors who'd found in each other the home they'd been searching for all along. Somewhere in the distance, the Charles River flowed on, carrying with it the memory of two children who'd met in darkness 15 years ago. A girl who'd chosen to save a stranger. A boy who'd chosen to survive long enough to find her again. Their scars had brought them together. Their love had made them whole. And that, I thought as Marco's arms tightened around me, was the best story I'd ever told. The one with no ending. Just an endless beginning, together.